It's time for Market Explainer, your number one business news podcast. Hosted by Danny and the big man. And it starts right now.
Let's move on to our next story, but before we do that, I want to tell you about Acre Gold. Acre Gold is a subscription service that lets you build up an account of money, and then when that account reaches the correct price, they're going to do something wacky. They're going to send you 2.5 grams of gold. Now, gold is the new store of value. It's the original, but it's really the original store of value. It's the money of kings. And it should be a part of everybody's portfolio. I'm not saying that there's wacky stuff coming in the future, but who knows?
Stop it.
Yeah. Nonetheless, you can go to our link down in the description down below, and you can get started with Acre Gold today, which is a great opportunity. We're excited to be bringing that to you. This next story, very exciting. My best friend, Chris Ronzio, who's the CEO of Trainual, which is a training company, is offering people, and I hang out with Chris all the time. We're best friends. And
Sure.
he is offering, in light of the Great Resignation and all this other stuff, he's offering you $5,000 to quit.
As always, Danny reads the front line. He's a headline article guy, and probably has no idea why he's offering people $5,000.
No, I actually know. I've actually read the story. I'm actually
because
familiar.
this is our most interesting story we have on the lot today. But go ahead.
Okay, this is the first of all, this is not the first time a company has done this. Zappos.com founder Tony Hsieh, may he rest in peace, had this policy where you would go through this strenuous kind of trading process for several months or whatever, and at the end of the process, they would offer you $5,000 to quit. And here's why they would do that. If you'll take $5,000 to quit today, it's not worth keeping you.
Correct. That's the thought process behind this.
Right.
Now, two things to consider. One, the jobs that this company is hiring for is not $7.25 an hour or $15 an hour. These are jobs that make upwards of 80 to 100 grand plus. So $5,000 in comparison
Right.
to, I mean, if McDonald's was giving you $5,000 to quit after 2 weeks, that would be a completely different story. In this case, though, this company, and say it again because I don't even know how to say that, Trainual.
We hang out with this dude every other Thursday on a Zoom call, and you can't remember how to say the name of his company.
Hey, whatever. I do good to remember Danny's name. Anyway, the point is $5,000 is just enough, and originally started out as $2,500 according to this article, and then they increased it to $5,000 to essentially try to tempt that person out of it. So really, $5,000 is a 2 weeks notice. What I mean?
And so, listen, they are understanding one thing, and I actually know people who have done wacky stuff. Like, I know somebody who took his paternal leave and went and took another job to see if he would like the job, and then when his paternity leave was over, he quit and he went back to his regular job. But in this competitive environment where workers are hard to come by, and part of what's happened now with people getting used to working from home, Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank was saying he expected 15% of his staff would not return to the office, and they would demand to work from home. He said it turns out he was wrong. Is 55%. He said half of the people who work for him. He said one guy said, I was raised on a farm. I'm going to go back and live on my family farm. I'm happy to work for you. I'm happy to put in the hours, but I'm not going back to the office. And that has created a hyper-competitive work environment where if you're a San Francisco-based company, if you're Facebook, and your employees say, I'm not living in San Francisco, Meta, right? And you say, my workers don't want to come to the San Francisco office. They just signed a huge lease in Austin. It's the largest lease in history of commercial real estate in Austin.
Absolutely, 100% is.
And I bet you they have thousands of workers, but they'll have hundreds of desks. And they won't have people going to the office on a regular basis. It'll just be a hub for them, for their thousands of workers spread out throughout the Austin Metroplex.
They'll use it to support the thousands, if not tens of thousands, of people across the United States.
They have a huge office in Dallas already, a data center, I believe. So I think that this guy is smart in understanding that his workers now have so much opportunity, especially if they're tech workers. They can, I mean, how many of these people just said, I'm going to South America. Like I know tech workers who said, I'm going to South America till this thing chills out. I was like, what?
He's like, look, you have an environment. So, numbers for jobs and stuff like that always lag a month or two. So the current data we have as far as complete data is November of last year. And in November, 3% of the American workforce quit their jobs. That's 4.5 million Americans quit their jobs in November. 3%. 3%, all in 1 month. That's just the month. That was after the millions before that in October. Yeah. So we continue to see this. So companies are trying to get creative of how do they retain employees longer. Right. This is one example of this guy saying, hey, if you train people for a couple of weeks and then offer them a buyout, if they take it, then you probably didn't want them to work there in the first place. They weren't going to be long-term employees anyway.
Correct.
Now, I am of this side that this whole idea, I think we need to move on from the long-term employee mentality anyway. Hire the best person that you can find to do the job that you need done. And when they're done, let them work for someone else.
Right.
Right?
I think the contract gig worker economy is only going to grow. And as websites like Working Not Working, all these other websites that are more gig focused, but they're, I use this word, artisan, but not really artisan. It's like, hey, I am, there's that clip in the TV show Silicon Valley where they're like, hey, we need a data, whatever it was, somebody who handles a specific thing really good. It turns out it's a 12-year-old kid. But the point is, like, they track him down. They need one specific thing done. He comes in and he does it. And then, like, he goes to soccer practice or whatever, lacrosse it was. I forget. It was an interesting scene, but I'm just saying that is the future of work.
Well, look, and
you specialize in a thing. Companies find you, or you find opportunities one way or the other. You go do things, you get paid, and you're off to the races with another one.
Companies, for whatever reason, are so slow to change the way they think. And you and I talked endlessly about being nimble as a company. Yeah. But companies, as the way they run, do not understand that they should change. It's always behind. It's always so far behind. For right now, in the medical industry, nurses are quitting their jobs because of what they're doing and turning around the next week and getting hired by the same hospitals as traveling nurses making 3 times what they were making because they quit their jobs because the hospital wouldn't give them a raise, but then would rehire them at 3 times, and because they're no longer working for them, they're working as contract labor. Right. That makes no sense as a company, and it's not just healthcare. I'm just saying that's a great example right now.
That's a fantastic example.
In Reddit's anti-work subreddit right now, there is story after story after story of people in that same scenario where they went to the company they worked for currently, asked for a raise because they haven't gotten one in years, or they're doing more than they're doing 5 people's jobs.
There's 14% inflation. And if you use the 1982 calculator, not the 2022, but the 1982 calculator, 2022 says 7%. 82's calculator says, hey, if you not just bread and milk
it's
and everything else, if you take everything into account, it's about 14%. So if you got a 2, 3, 4% raise last year, you lost 10%.
Well, but the company's making money off of you too. That's the way they're saving that
they're
on
making
what would be their payroll next year, right?
Yeah.
So they're running into this, and then they're turning around, and these companies are realizing not only do you need these employees? Like in cases like nurses, you have to have nurses, right?
Right. Yeah.
But they're not even realizing what their employees can do. So many of these stories in Reddit subreddits anti-work is I've done this one job for this employer for 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years, and they didn't understand what I did. So when I left, all of a sudden they had no one employed that did this job that is
Right.
necessary, and now they're hiring me at 3 times the rate to come back and you know what I
Right.
mean, and
And
consult.
so I don't care about whatever anti-work communist nonsense Big Man is talking about. Okay, that's disgusting to me. However, okay, whatever it is you do in your life to make money, understand like you should have a very Ayn Randian, self-centered, like I'm the best, I'm gonna kill it, and you should carry that forward. You should have big brass cojones wherever you go and whatever job it is you do that you're really good at it, and you should push bully around companies. I'm not a corporatist. I'm a
Yeah,
free market guy.
right.
So I'm not here saying you should just be grateful to have a job. You should tell them where to stick it all the time and don't take, you know,
I agree with you, but that's not most people's psychology, right?
that
And in
isn't, but
this
that's
in
the problem.
this company, right, is this is Psych 101, right?
Right.
Try to buy somebody, right? They're either buying in to your company. This is Psych 101. Getting someone to sign their name to give up something. Again, Psychology 101. I'm getting you to physically agree that you're in it to win it. You are here. Now,
Right.
no part of this article and no part of this article that was related to this article that I could find about this company actually shows the numbers on the back end, because this is not a brand new company. It's been around for a couple of years.
Right.
It's only done this 38 times. How many
Right.
of those 38 people actually did stick around for that 2 years, that they're still employed? They're not,
Right.
they haven't published any of those numbers, because look, I can go, hey, I'm not giving up one paycheck to leave this company, because it's, why would I do that when I can just work here for the next 6 months, right, or whatever.
Right. And then make
So
more than $5,000.
does this actually work? There's no data in here to say that it does, except for
Right.
the fact that out of those 38 people that they've done this for, not a single one of them have taken the 5 grand.
Right. That's interesting. Here's what I can tell you. I've had this situation happen before. I got hired to do a job, and in the course of doing the job, a bunch of people that I started working with, we were all hired as contractors, and two of the people went through the 4-week training period and said, I got offered a better job somewhere else. I'm leaving. And the company was like, well, you just started it. And they're like, well, I'm a contractor. What do you expect? And so, what do you expect? Like, I think that this is an interesting. Here's the thing. There's that guy. His name's Dan Price. He's out in Seattle. Um, and he owns a company. I forget what it's called, but they're a payment processing company. Nothing sexy, not
Mm-hmm.
new forward-thinking technology. It's just old-fashioned payment processing. I know a bunch of guys who made fortunes in that industry. Here's what's
Sure.
interesting. A couple years ago, he changed his business model and said no one here makes less than $70,000 a year. Now, it pissed off some of his employees that had worked up to 70 grand.
Sure.
But for everyone who was like, well, now this is just because, if the base salary is 70 and I just worked up to 70, shouldn't I be getting 85? Right? What's interesting is that guy probably got a ton of great workers and probably got he got, what they call in media, earned media, right? So
Mhm.
here's a guy who, this is a non-proprietary business, nothing sexy. It's old fashioned. He has to work within the confines of a bunch of regulation. And he figured out a way to do inexpensive free marketing. Now, isn't that what this guy's also doing? Didn't he just get two guys on a podcast to talk about his company? And obviously, I'm joking. I don't know this dude. I don't know what his company does. I don't know what his company even does.
No,
Okay.
it sounds like a good old fashioned training and headhunter type of business, right? I'm
Yes.
matching a company with
Right.
an employee, and I'm getting paid by the company to find good employees and train them. And this is again Psych 101, right? He's selling it to companies that this means that these employees that we're sending to you are buying into your company,
Yeah.
right? Because
Whatever
we're
it is.
making them this offer and they don't take it. It also, he's turning around, and I guarantee you the sales pitch to the potential employee is, hey, 2 weeks from now, if you don't like it, you get to fire them and walk away with their money, right? He's pitching
Right.
both sides. This company is, right? They're pitching both sides. The employee thinks that they're there for the employee. The company thinks that they're there for the company. And all the meantime is they're getting charged. Now, this is the whole, guess what? The whole headhunting industry is, I find fascinating. The whole
Right.
training and headhunting industry I find
Right.
fascinating because every employer, look, their job, and I'm not against them, is to pay you the least amount of money for the most amount of work. That's
Right. That's
that's
just the
that's their
business.
perspective. Your
Right.
job as an employee is to do the least amount of work for the most
For the
amount of
most
money,
amount of money.
right?
Yeah.
Right? Now, somehow headhunting companies and training companies put themselves in the middle. So you got a company that doesn't want to pay you, let's just throw out a number, $20 an hour, right? They
Right.
don't want to pay you $20 an hour, but they'll pay the company $30 an hour to pay you 18 so that they get
Right.
12.
Right.
I Why that mentality? How
I don't get
headhunting
it.
companies and training companies have been able to exist and get companies to pay them on
It's
work that they don't even do
yeah. I
is
don't.
unbelievable to me.
So it's fast. It's a fascinating industry, and I had a family member who owned a firm like this, so I have a little insight. But it's really a fascinating industry. I don't understand why it's so huge, but as contract labor continues to grow as reality, part of it, what it is regulatory infrastructure requires so much that it takes it. So, in order to employ somebody at $18 an hour, let's say, let's throw out a big company. Let's say Wells Fargo has to put, the $18 plus another $16 to support the employee, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what, 35,
Right.
$33. And they're going, hey, we can just pay them $30 and they'll employ the person, and that
Mm-hmm.
person will work for us. And so they're looking at reducing their HR costs by doing that. That's all.
Well, and if the math works out, great, but it's still expensive, and it's more expensive than most people think. And then on
Right.
top of that, there's no rule, at least in any state that I know of. At least in Texas, I know that there's no rule. That
Right.
company that's hiring you, that's contracting you to the third company,
Yeah.
does not have to disclose how much they're making. They could be
No,
making
no.
more than you.
Yeah. So I know in a few situations where people went back to the contracting company and said, I have other offers for double what I'm making. And they didn't even flinch and they just give you the money because they're making so much.
That's what
You're
I'm saying.
getting,
So that, and they don't even have to disclose it. They've hired you for 12. Maybe they're making 40 off of
so
you. And
yeah, that's the thing is like, I know somebody who was getting $15 an hour somewhere and found out that the contracting company was getting 45 because someone messed up and emailed them the wrong piece of documentation.
Mhm.
So they turned around and said, well, I need 40. So it's either 40 or I walk.
Right. So again, this guy's got an approach I don't think that will catch on. I
Right.
think it's more symbolic than it is anything else. But I do appreciate the hustle. This guy's figured out a way that no other there's not I don't know of another training slash head hunting company out there
Right.
going,
Yeah. That
hey,
does this.
you
Yeah.
know, that's telling companies, hey, we're giving them this. And you know what?
Right.
They're probably even telling the employer, hey, this isn't coming out of your pocket, it'll come out of ours.
Right.
We'll pay the $5,000 if any of these employees take it, because they
Right.
know they're not gonna, right? Like
Right.
it. So who would give up $5,000 for a $10,000 a
I
month
would.
job?
I I would do it right now.
That's insane. But
Well, no, 5
Danny,
grand,
as usual, is the
2,500 this
outcast.